Welcome to Always Coachable, conversations with athletes, leaders, coaches, and high performers about growth, mindset, resilience, and the lessons that shape us over time. I'm Sandy Cohen, and today's guest is Lee Elias. And I want to give you a little bit of a backstory on Lee here. Lee is an author, a podcaster, and a coach who's built his life around one idea that sport can shape better people, not just better players. He's the founder of Hockey Wraparound and the co-founder of Rink Rats Publishing, the host of Our Kids Play Hockey podcast. And through his Game 7 group, he spent over a decade as a team builder, speaker, and a culture coach. He's also the head coach of the Puerto Rican women's national ice hockey team. Because, of course, the hockey guy finds a way to bring the rink everywhere he goes. He's also a father, a husband, and just an amazing person. And Lee, here is why I wanted you on the show. It's not just the resume, but you strike me as one of those people who absolutely pours everything back into the community. Just a genuine resource, a guy who totally cares. And the impact that I think as an outsider that you've had on the youth hockey community is something I have admired for such a long time. I'm a huge fan, and I'm glad to have you. So, Lee, welcome to the show, buddy.
Yeah, Sandy, thanks for that intro, buddy. I really appreciate that. It's always interesting to hear all of those things brought up in one paragraph. But it's you finished it with the thing that's most important, right? Is being a father and being a husband, and I'm blessed with that, and I'm blessed to be in the game that I love in sports every single day.
How close do you think that intro is to how you actually see yourself?
Well, that's a great question. I can tell you right now that the accolades, the titles mean very little to me, right? One of the things I love is that when I show up to my desk every day, I'm just doing something that I love, and I try and be real present with that. Same thing when I'm with my kids or my wife or my family. So that's kind of how I live. There was a time in my life when I was younger that titles really mattered and awards really mattered. But the farther I get down on this journey, you really enjoy the journey. You learn how to do that. And the fact that, again, I can wake up every day, or I should say most days, and do something that I love doing, that's what's important to me, right? And again, that's family, that's hockey, that's sports, team building, whatever realm I'm writing, right? Whatever realm I'm in that day.
Take me back to before all of the accolades, before all of those things that I just said. What was Lee like before that? Because the next question is going to be, how did you kind of get into all that stuff? But what were you like before all this stuff?
Yeah, I'll say this. There's a point before I discovered hockey where I was a drastically different person. As a young boy, I was teased a lot, at least from my perception I felt alone a lot. And when I found hockey, which was late, I didn't really start playing ice hockey till I was 12, probably found roller hockey about 10 and 11. It spoke to me immediately. And not just the game, but the chaos of it seemed to be organized. And that became an outlet for me. And as I matured as a person and started caring less about what other people thought of me, as we all evolved through that, I got very focused on, the goals that I had. And as, a 13, 14-year-old, I'll tell it as a story. I remember I was outside playing roller hockey with a friend of mine. And, I was in the game a few years, really loved it. And I said to him, hey, do you think that we could ever make the NHL? And his response almost immediately was, no, there's no way. Right. And I remember that it triggered this thought that has kind of governed a lot of the stuff that I do, which was, but someone's got to make it. Right.
I love that.
Like someone's got to make it. Now, I never made it as a player per se. I did work at the NHL for many years, and I have done a lot with NHL players, and I've skated with them in some realms. The thought of, but why not, started to really, why can't I get a master's degree? Why can't I be an author? Why can't I start a business without any fear of what other people thought? So just to finalize the answer here, you can see how that I grew up with this tremendous fear of being teased and what other people thought of me, to the point that I was able to shed that, which was a blessing, and then proceed with a lot of these endeavors that I've taken in my life. And we'll get to it in a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you remember what it was? Because that's a pivotal thing. I mean, so many people have that kind of in their story. Do you remember what it was, or something that someone taught you, or how were you able to make that transition from not caring about, or maybe it's not even not caring, but more believing in yourself?
Yeah, I don't mind telling this. I don't talk about this a lot, and I wish more people would ask me that question. So it got to a point when I was younger that I actually, my parents brought me to therapy, right? And it wasn't like I was drowning or anything like that. They just recognized something, and I always give them credit for that they just weren't afraid to do that. And the therapist said to me one time, essentially, don't be a victim. Like, explain to me what a victim was, and that how I was thinking like a victim, where, again, it's a complicated, not one podcast worth of information,
Yep.
but the mindset is I always internalized everything as if it was happening to me and had a very victim-like mentality. All right. I'm not talking, just for your listeners, like court level victim type stuff. This is a
Sure.
mindset we're talking about. And when I recognized that and that clicked, I just made the decision to practice not thinking that way. So when I was able to call out that thinking, suddenly when I was in situations, being teased, it was, oh, I'm in control of how I respond to this. That was a really impactful lesson to learn at a very young age that I know some adults that don't even have that down.
So at 13-ish, 14-ish.
I was younger. I was probably 9 or 10 when that happened, to be honest with you.
Wow. And can you track back to just how your life or your childhood changed from making that decision?
Yeah, I think that, when I was able to shun off the negative thinking, it opened up the world to me, right? Like, I was not worried about impressing other people really since then. I don't know how else to say it. And what that did was open up, well, what are my dreams? What are my goals? Look, I also have, and I'll admit this, I have an uncommon belief that I can succeed. All right. It allows me to take certain calculated risks, right?
Sure.
I also had it is important. I had a really great upbringing with my parents and my brother, and I felt safe at home. And not everybody gets that, and I'm very aware of that. But that environment put me in a position to allow my creativity to kind of flourish, right? I just wasn't afraid to try, right? I'll give you another story too, like one that makes me think about my younger years was when we were in like gym in like middle school and high school. We used to have to run the mile. And I just wanted to win. And you're going to see this kind of turn into my coaching side of things. I just wanted to win the race, right? It wasn't so much beat the other kids.
Sure.
I just wanted to win. And I would go so hard. And I'll never forget this moment, Sandy. You're making me think about it. I did a mile in like incredible time for my age. And the other kids were kind of teasing me afterwards for trying too hard. I remember this. And again, I was at a point like whatever. But the gym teacher, Mr. Boyd was his name. I'll never forget this. He stood up. I didn't ask him.
Shout out to Mr. Boyd.
Yeah, right. I remember he stood up and he told them, like, what are you making fun of him for? He just wanted it more than you. And that really stuck with me, along with the kind of mindset of someone out there is always working harder than you, right? And that led me down a path, especially in my teenage years of, man, I trained all the time after 12. And again, I went really far for someone who started at 12. I got a cup of coffee in the minors. I rubbed elbows with a lot of pro players. I went in the game. I accomplished things that I wanted to accomplish, but it was that kind of chemical mix, that chemistry of the mindset plus the attitude plus the belief. We're realizing belief is such a skill, right? That pushed me forward. Doesn't mean there weren't, speed humps and things that happened. I mean, I tore my shoulder my senior year. I missed my whole senior year playing. Like, there's a lot of things that happened. It wasn't always a beautiful journey.
Where did fear fit into that, right? Because there's probably two sides of it. One is chasing what you want and believing in it, which I think a lot of people have, but sometimes the fear level, overpowers it. So were you nervous to try?
No, I don't ever remember a time where I was fearful to try. Right. I do remember fearing not accomplishing my goals. All right. Like I just alluded to it. Like when I tore my shoulder my senior year, like, I'd been doing all this work. So I was fearful of what does this mean for my career, but it didn't stop me from doing
Yep.
anything. If anything, it made me work harder. So, fear is an emotion like anything else. I always say, I'm going to flip it to kind of coach mode here. I talk to my athletes all the time that if you're feeling pressure, if you're feeling stressed out because of a big game, that's a privilege, right? I always say
Absolutely.
fear's a friend of mine, right?
Yep.
The higher level you play, the more that's on the line, the more you're going to feel that. But that's how I
Yep.
say it. It's a friend of mine. Like, how privileged are we to feel that kind of emotion because we're in such a big game?
Yep.
So I think that is true for me back then too. Of okay, my shoulder's torn. I'm going to work harder, right? And I did, And again, I'm not saying that with like I want a pat in the back. That's
Sure.
just where I was at in my head.
Yep. When you started to, like, through your college years, when did the entrepreneurial side really start to kind of flourish? Because obviously, I mean, you've created many things,
Yeah.
and there are probably many, negative what ifs. What if it doesn't work, and all the reasons why to not chase it. But do you remember a time when you kind of flipped that switch for yourself and just said, "Hey, we're gonna start doing stuff"?
Yeah, it's a funny question because when I look back now, I was always insanely creative, right? So when I was a teenager, I made my own training aids. I'd get a piece of sheet metal and some WD-40. I'd shoot pucks
Yeah,
off it. I made targets on the net with paper plates. For your younger listeners, there were no training aids when I was growing
that's
up,
right.
right? We had to make our own. For a passer, right? There's no rebound passers. I had to put a piece of wood and bounce the puck off that, and
That's because it was in
you
the
know,
late 1800s. They didn't
right,
have ice then, did they?
yeah,
I'm kidding.
not when it
I'm
was
older.
hot.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
but
older than you.
but look, like was very creative, and not just in hockey, and in art and things like that. So looking back now, I'm realizing some of those tools were there. When I really decided that business would be the future, there's kind of two moments. One is that in my mid 20s, early 20s, I kind of realized I was more than just a hockey player, and that the work ethic that I had been applying to the game could be applied to other things. And suddenly the universe expanded, and I can write, I can build, I can do these things. That mixed with working, we'll say, some real world jobs and seeing how corporate America worked and corporate companies worked, that chemistry created the I don't want to work for anybody anymore. So,
Yeah, that's right.
I decided that, hey, I think I can build a business. And again, there's a lot of tools I got along the way of how to build a better business. One of the things that you need to build a business really effectively is time. My wife, I joined the Air Force. She's a physician. And suddenly I found myself in England with a lot of time. And I chose during that time to become a professional ice hockey coach with the pro league over there and build my first company, which it still exists today, Hockey Wraparound. And that's how it started. And Sandy, kind of to your question earlier, I don't remember thinking, oh, what if this fails? I
Yep.
remember thinking, this is going to work. Let's make it work. Right. Doesn't mean
Yep.
I don't have failures. Okay. I've had businesses that have not worked. I'm not afraid to try. And I want to say this too, again, like it's not a blind try. Like it's a calculated risk. That's what
Sure.
I say to people is I'm very good at turning the logic engine on and saying, this makes sense. This doesn't make sense. No matter what you do entrepreneurially or with any dream you have, you're jumping off a cliff at some point. What I tell people is you're going to jump off a cliff, know how far the drop is and how
Yep.
far away the other cliff is that
Yep.
you're jumping to. If you jump without thinking about that, it's not a good game to be playing.
Right, because
Right?
taking chances doesn't mean not educated chances, right?
A hundred
Or
percent.
without reason, right? It just means one of the things I've noticed after doing this podcast, what a lot of these people have in common, that the people that I'm speaking with, they are, for lack of a better word, they're hunters, and I say you fall into that category, right? Whether it's hunting information, impact, a team, feedback, like
Yeah.
they're chasing, and I don't think they're running away from things. I think they're running towards creating. Do you feel that's accurate for yourself?
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I were just having a conversation about this with just like problem solving skills, right? Which I could be hunting, right? Because when you're trying to solve a problem, you're hunting for an answer. So yeah, I think that you're spot on. And again, I'll tell you a couple things that I think contributed to me being that way was I was taught to find the answer myself, right? And it was not in a cold way. It was just always, well, have you tried this before you came to me? I had a great mentor in college. I'll never forget this. I remember I was in a broadcasting major, which for those who don't know, when you do broadcasting in undergrad, it's like a job. It's not a normal major. Like if you're late to class, they fire you. Like that's kind of how it runs because they know what you're getting into. And I will never forget, I sat down with one of my mentors there one time, and she and I had a great, teacher-student relationship. And I asked her a question, and she just said this. She said, you can come to me for help whenever you want, but you better have tried to do everything you possibly can to solve this problem before you come to me. You coming to me because there are no more avenues for you to explore, and then I will help you. Man, did that stick with me. Yep. All right. And one of the things that I'm seeing now is I don't see that type of hunting enough from athletes, from people, right? I mean, I'm being critical here, but it blows my mind in a time period when we have this much access to information, a time period where if you have an Alexa in your house or a Siri, you can speak into the thin air and thin air will answer your question. I still don't see people hunting for those resources enough, as you just said. So yeah, I do consider myself that way, but I want everyone to be that way. I don't want that to be an advantage for me because I think the rising tide lifts all ships. If we're all doing that, imagine what could happen. You'll find that about me. I'm very team oriented. Like that's what I want. There's no ego in it for me. I want everyone to have that mindset.
What do you think? I'm putting you on the spot here. I apologize.
Yeah, go. I'm pro.
Because I see a lot of that in my work as well. I'm not saying it is better than when we were younger, or it's just different. It's different. Today's athlete is just different.
Yeah.
What you just said, why do you think that is the case for maybe younger people, right? Like arguably they are in our hockey lives, they're bigger, faster, stronger, more skilled than we were when we were younger. But I would say maybe that like resilience element or that grit element, that get back up element doesn't seem like it's as prevalent maybe when you and I were younger.
Yeah. Look, I'll tell you this because there's a broad answer and then there's like the micro points of the answer, right? I think two things have to be true to everybody listening. One is, every generation's different. Every generation's the same, right? When you and I were kids, there were things that the older generation, these kids do this. And like, that's true of every generation. You can look at newspapers going back hundreds of years and you'll see the adult generation complaining about the younger generation.
Absolutely.
So I bring that to my thinking of this is not new. All right. The application is new. The second half of this, and this is for everybody listening, we as the leaders have to be as much learners as we are teachers. All right. And one thing that frustrates me, I want to start with this, is when people in a coaching role or leadership role, and I'm not saying you did this, complain about, oh man, why are they like this? Well, that's not going to solve the problem. You talk about being a hunter. All right. You need to meet these kids where they're at. All right. Now, what I have found with that mindset, and we've talked about this before, is that you've got a generation growing up of kids that watch highlights mostly. They're not seeing plays develop. They're not seeing that. That's what they're growing up with when they're young. It makes an impact. There's a reason social media is being banned by certain countries. Yep. That's one aspect of it. Two, and I don't blame them for this because adults are just as guilty of what I'm about to say, is attention spans are shorter and shorter and shorter. All right, adults, we love to say, these kids with the short attention spans. We have just as short attention spans. It has affected us too. Like there's no need to lie to yourself about that. Yep. Right? So we cannot keep attention. And I think what happens a lot, Sandy, is we're teaching the same way we were taught, which is not effective anymore. So we have to explore new ways to teach, new ways to communicate, got to meet these kids where they're at, right? And that's an ongoing science, right? I learn, and again, you mentioned I'm a national team coach. I'm also a 10U coach. And I learn from those 10U players as much as I learn from the national players and as much as I hope they learn from me, right? Because I'm not 10 anymore. And there's no way being 10 today is the same as it was in the 1800s, like you talked about. Right. So it's one of those things of like, it's less about why and more about, hey, how can we solve this problem, or how can we solve what's going on? It's not even a problem to me. It's just the reality of today.
Two things you said, which I think are so relevant. This is my personal opinion, but meeting, right? Because coaching is hard. I mean, coaching is hard.
It is.
But meeting the student or the player or whomever it is, meeting them where they are, I think that's certainly one
Not
strategy.
enough people do that.
And the other thing that you said is something that I think has probably carried you so far is for those coaches, they always have to be learning themselves, right? They have to be aware. They have to be seeing whether the audience is different. But in order for you to give that expertise, right, you have to be like in constant learning mode. Yeah.
I would say if you're not still learning, you're not a coach, right? You're just a director at that point, right? Like the learning never stops. The best coaches that I know, yourself included, are on a constant, endeavor to learn all the time. I crave it. I want to learn what more people are doing. I want to learn what other coaches are doing. I have calls with coaches that I meet just to discuss, what are you doing? What have you learned along the way? If that stops, it's dangerous, right? At any level, right? Again, I think that when you're a new coach, you have a choice to make. Do you want to lead with your ego or do you want to lead with your curiosity, right? And I feel like all coaches go through, including myself, an ego period where it is a little bit about you and what you know and what you want to share with people. None of us are the first ones to do it, right? And I'm not saying coaches can't innovate, but innovation comes through that learning. If that's not part of the equation, again, you're not a coach if you're not learning.
When did you make the switch for yourself? I would say in the podcast years. When did you make the switch from creating like the wraparound business and just that business to getting to a place where you said, I want to create something that honestly is going to have impact for so many people. And it's take the ego out of it. There's no way that you, 500 episodes more for your,
it's over now.
Yeah. There's no way that you could do that. Certainly if it wasn't being received well, but that is about doing it for a greater good, no doubt.
Yeah. What's interesting about Our Kids Play Hockey, which is, it's like a network now, is it spawned from a few things. One, as I mentioned, I have a broadcasting background. So I've always enjoyed radio, being on the air, podcasting. That's one part of the equation. A second part of the equation was my kids started playing hockey, and I was on an expedition to learn. Right. So if for those of you who listen to the show, my co-hosts, Christy Casciano Burns and Mike Bonelli, had kids in the game already. Christy's kids were just at the time when we started just about to graduate from college. Mike's kids were 4 or 5 years into the journey. And here I was with my son at the time, just starting. So I saw this as an educational opportunity for myself. And believe me, it has been. I have benefited greatly from being a host on that show with my own kids. And then maybe most important was we started that show in the midst of COVID. So we had time. But the crazy hockey parent moniker was everywhere, parents fighting and all this stuff. Yep. And I just thought to myself, that's not a great representation of the audience of youth hockey. There are good parents out there. And I realized there was no show and there was a huge gap for those people. I said, let's see if we can connect with those people. And man, did we connect with those people.
Were you nervous? Were you nervous to kind of jump off and try it?
No, I really wasn't, because my attitude's like, what's the worst that happens? Nobody listens? Okay. It doesn't change anything. If no one's listening now, before I do the show, it's not going to change anything. And
was there a time when you realized what we're doing here has impact? Like we've quote made it, or this is legit.
Yeah. Again, I talk about timing, and for everybody listening, whether it's business, sports, anything, timing is one of the most important elements of success, right? I always say a great idea. Our Kids Play Hockey was a great idea. The timing is just as important. We had a lot of time during COVID. So we could suddenly afford to do 50 episodes, right, for a year, honestly, with really no issues. It became fun because we weren't out. Right? Yeah. We looked forward to seeing each other. So that was part of it. But I remember the early years getting 50 downloads a week and thinking, wow, we got 50 downloads this
50
week.
People.
Right. Now you can add a couple zeros on that.
Absolutely.
Now, okay. And the thing is that we were just so excited that people were partaking and wanting to learn. Now, yeah, right around the 1 year, year and a half mark, we noticed something dramatic started happening. Like listens were going up at a pretty exponential rate. Like you can see, like when we look at our stats, is a hockey stick that, pun intended, that explodes there, and it hasn't stopped. It continues to go. So I wish I could tell you what if it was a magic number of episodes or what had happened, but we did enough that people started telling other people about it. It was very organic. People shared it, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. But yeah, that I just remember the time when we were having massive acceleration. I'm gonna say it again, Sandy. It hasn't really slowed down. Like we know every September, October time period, we get
Yep.
the new parents come in and we get a
Yep.
spike. Now, I will tell you this real quick that, not that we need to stay on the show the whole time. The stat with that show that I'm most proud of is that every episode we've ever recorded, all 500 plus, within a 30 to 90 day period, almost every episode gets at least one listen, which means that people are going back and
Yep.
listening to all of them because they're 99% of them are very evergreen topics. So I'm proud of that because it means we have created a resource that a parent coming in can go and listen to episode 6, whatever that was about, and get just as much value out of episode 506.
Where do you think for you that tenacity or discipline came from, right? Because a lot of people, when they're trying new things, as
Yeah.
they are learning and evolving and trying to apply the new version of themselves, those skills to new things, sometimes it's easier just to hang it up and walk away if it doesn't achieve X. Who even knows if that's relevant? But where do you think that came from for you? The resilience to keep doing it, or just the discipline to keep recording, whether it's 5 listeners, then to 7, not throwing
Yeah.
the towel.
Well, I think, again, there's two parts to that too. One is just the mentality of like improve a little bit every day, improve a little bit every week, right? If we keep seeing improvement, let's keep going. If it gets stagnant and doesn't improve, let's stop. Like, and being okay with that, right? Like, again, there's no failure to me in trying, right? Like, I mean, sure, if the show didn't work, you could say, oh, it failed. I'm not afraid of that. That has never bothered me to have something fail. All right. In the sense of, internally, like I don't want things to fail.
Sure,
I'm not saying I don't
sure.
care if they fail. Like I don't want anything to fail, but
But
I don't have
you're not
fear of
scared
it.
to roll the dice.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of it failing, right? If that makes sense. The second thing is, same way I trained for hockey, same way I coached. We are very disciplined. We record every Monday morning for 6 years straight. And yes, there are other record dates that we do. If the odd Monday doesn't work, if we have a guest that can't work, we move around it. But even my co-host will tell you there is a consistency. Every Monday morning, we record, and if we're going to miss it, we schedule around it. So it's just part of our week now. And then we have a whole crew of people that work on editing, pre-production, post-production. We have a community manager, a producer. Like it's a team endeavor. So, kind of the you take care of, I'll take care of me if you take care of you mindset within the team. But it's a well-oiled machine, and we run it same way we run a hockey team or work. It's consistency is key. And then I got to say this too. There's a standard. All right. I'll give you one great standard, and you did this on your show here. It's we have a standard of I will introduce the guest. We are not going to have a guest introduce themselves. The thing that I can't stand on podcasts is when you jump on and someone goes, hey, tell me about yourself. No, that was your job to research that. If you deem me to be a guest, that was your job. Now, these standards, again, I have standards in my coaching. I have standards in my life, my work. We have really high standards. Last thing I'll say, because again, I'm talking about the podcast a lot, but the questions, right? Like we don't just show up and ask questions. We take a lot of time and craft really good questions. Great questions demand great answers, right? Bad questions will get bad answers. So we really prepare for these shows before we go on. That's another reason why it's successful, right? Yeah.
Do you think the version of yourself today is significantly better at all of this and these intangibles than when you first started the podcast?
That's an interesting question because I don't view things like that. Like I am who I am today, right? I mean, if you're asking me if there's been improvement, of course. I mean, I'm evolving all the time. It goes back to what I said about a little bit better every day. But I'm incredibly patient with progress. Like, you know, there are times of impatience with it. Like I want to be somewhere faster. I think that happens to all of us, but I bring it back to being as present as I can. I'd say typically when I'm frustrated or I'm restless, and all the emotions that go with that, I try and acknowledge those feelings and then really explore why am I restless? Why am I feeling this? And then it just comes back to, okay, well, what's the process? But I don't often think, wow, I'm so much better at this now than I was, unless I'm prompted. Again, I think we were talking earlier about this, about, oh, if you go back and listen to the first episodes, you can really see the improvement. But I don't think about that generally, right? Because it's not, that's not the goal for me here. The goal is what you said earlier, is to have impact and provide value. I want to get better at that, I guess would be the right word. Or how about this? Going back to your saying, I'm hunting for that every day, right? I don't even think it's getting better. I hunt for that. I crave that of how can I improve someone else's experience today. And again, I'm not always perfect at it. I make mistakes, right? Like I like to think of myself as a great communicator. I don't always communicate great. And I'm very patient with that process. It doesn't, I try not to beat myself up if I make a mistake, right? So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. Those are the big four. Everybody that I've talked to, and it has not been close to 500 as yours has, but everybody who I have great respect for, I put you into that category. They mention in some form or another the things that you just said. There's some sort of hunting. Standards are a huge one.
Huge.
The concept of patience and always listening / learning. Those things I have seen for the people that I've talked to, every single one of them, who they're all different walks of life, right? Some are athletes, some are not, but they all mention those four things.
Well, what's crazy about those four things too, Sandy, is that when I, and again, I'm human. Like if I falter on any of them, I'm not in a good mindset. Like I'll tell you right now, if I can't be creative, I get very frustrated. All right. Now, when I say creative, just to kind of define it, there's so many ways I can be creative: writing, coaching, broadcasting, product development. Like I am so blessed that I have all of these creative endeavors, because I think I would lose my mind. But if I go through a period where I'm not creative, it bothers me like heavily. That's why writing is not just me writing; it is therapy for me to be able to write about whatever I'm writing about. If the standard drops, which I would say is very rare, I know I need to course correct on that pretty quickly. And it does happen, right? It does. When I say complacency here, I don't mean complacency in an ego standpoint, but like anything, like if you're doing something long enough, it can get stagnant and you can trail off a little bit. I will say that I'm very, very quick to course correct. And I want your audience to hear that, because it is not, and I find this about, this too, about high achievers, like it's not a straight line. Like we falter plenty, but I think it's our ability to, and you said resilience earlier, to course correct very quickly. That's there. And again, one of the things, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. And when we talk about kind of critical thinking skills, and going back to earlier in the episode when I said about, but someone's got to make it, right? I want to find solutions. Like I don't remember too many times, I'm thinking about this now because you're bringing it up, where I have been in a position where I didn't know the answer, where I just stopped at, I don't know the answer to that. Like, I want to know the answer. I want to search the answer. I'm going to say it again. We have more sources now than ever to at least get you going towards an answer.
Sure.
Right? It does boggle my mind a little bit with the lack of critical thinking skills of, try and find a solution to your problem. Right? And so that's, I think, maybe that we're talking about. That's something that I find is a little different in me. I'm always pretty relentless hunting, right? Like I want to find.
I used to have a coach who really had insane impact in my life, and this was probably back to squirts. I mean, I have no idea what sort of hockey components or whatever. That's not what I remember. What I distinctly remember is this individual taught me really what it meant to be a competitor. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he said, it's ironic that you were saying this. He used to say, right, and we're so young at that point, but he used to say, problem reporters are always problems. He said, your problem solvers, those are your achievers.
Yeah. It's true.
And when you're at that age and you hear something like that, I mean, there's so many just amazing lessons in that one phrase. But for you, who has their hands in so many things, the podcast, creating new products. I've talked to you before. You were involved in sunglasses during the Olympics, and just
still are.
yeah, and all of your podcasts. Besides the money part, and I would say maybe the clicks or whatever, how do you put your head down at night and evaluate success? What's the metric for you?
I mean, I have a very direct answer to this question, and I'm going to preface this for your audience that what I'm about to say is not a joke. It is not wishy-washy. It's not to appease the question. This is my primary definition of success, all right, is I want to go to bed knowing that my kids love me and them knowing that I love them. Ugh. I don't care what's going on in my life. I mean that, all right? I've had plenty going on in my life that would not be deemed pleasant.
Yep.
If that happens at the end of the day, I have succeeded, all right? And I know that being a son, I know that being a brother, a father, a husband. If that part of it's not there, what the hell am I doing? I don't care how many gold medals I win or trophies I win or awards I win. If I don't have that part, I failed the day, right? So that governs literally every decision that I make. Am I perfect at it? Like I said, no. There's days I'm not the best dad. It happens, all right? I course correct quickly, like I said.
Yep.
All right, but that is my primary definition of success. Succeeding in sports and business is wonderful. I don't want to downplay that either. It's not that I don't care. It's just not my ultimate definition of success, right? To me, actually, in the business side of things, Sandy, and the sports side of things, and this is the commonality between all the things, is I want my team to succeed. When my team succeeds, that fills my tank, right? It's not really about success for me outside of what I just said with my kids. So
once you had kids and a spouse, do you think though that was always your definition of success? Like some people, when I ask this question, they say, they achieved, got comfortable, maybe had some safety nets, and then they switched that thinking to, oh, now I have a more right. They things were easier, and so it was, oh, this is the stuff that matters. Do you feel like that's been the definition of success for you this whole journey?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because obviously anybody with kids out there knows that's life-changing in how that works, right? So my definition prior to my kids was different, right? But I can tell you this, in my younger, we'll say formative years, in my early 20s, success was being at the top of the mountain, the job title, who am I coaching, what awards have I won? And I can tell you right now that chasing all of that led me to losing all of it.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how that works? It's so true, right?
Yeah, it is. And when I stopped looking for it, and again, here's a little echo for you. I like to tie things together, okay? There was one point in my life, I was the head coach of a collegiate team. I was working at the National Hockey League. Top of the mountain. I had everything, right? And I felt like I had everything. Man, I had a pretty big ego about this at the time. That I wasn't an a-hole, but I had an ego about it. And within a month, I lost all those things by not really at my own doing, right? There was a lot of things that happened. It's another podcast episode. But the point is, I lost it all. And I was left with nothing. The only thing I was left with, was my girlfriend at the time who became my wife, my father, my mother, my brother, my family. And that really cleared up for me what was important because that was all that was there. All right. So I had to fall off the cliff to see that. Yep. All right. And I was now here's the thing. I had that safety net. Not everyone does. Not everyone has that support system. All right. I'm hyper aware of that. All right. Now going back to what we talked about earlier, I wanted to say this too, is that I talked about being a victim and that mentality. I was acceptance seeking all the time when I was a young kid. When I stopped looking for it, that's when I started getting it, which was funny. When I was getting teased, I was looking for it too much. That was my contribution to that.
How did you learn
situation.
How to do that though, right? If someone could bottle that, because that's so true with so many people. I've experienced that also myself, and it's almost like, you feel better about it once it starts to happen. But because the nervous part is Well, like we want to be driving the ship, right? We want to control what
Right.
we can control. If my foot's not all the way down on the gas, I'm not trying hard enough. But so how do you think you realized what you just said? How did you learn that?
Through experience and failing. All right. And I think, again, not being afraid to fail allows me to fail quite a lot. And I think that learning from that was at light speed because of that. All right. And I think that people who are terrified of failing, it sounds weird, fail less. All right.
Yep.
In at least the material way. Right. And you don't get to experience these things. Now, here's the thing, the losing everything I had professionally, which is crazy with what, like you've said, I've accomplished at the beginning of the episode. It's crazy to think about where we've come from there.
Yep.
All right. But I don't wish that pain on anybody. The what I felt at that time. I was depressed. I mean, it was like, I don't wish that on people. But the truth is, Sandy, sometimes you have to go through those things to kind of awaken some of these things.
I went through the exact same thing.
You wrote about it. Yeah.
I wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was such a therapeutic thing because when I put it down and I felt like I was just kind of letting it go, what you said was absolutely the case, that you just keep moving forward. I mean, everybody falls. Let's work on the get back up.
Let me give you an amazing coincidence that this happened yesterday. Story for you. People love stories, right? So I'll tell this from the point of view of how it happened. Yesterday, my son broke one of the garage door windows. All right, and I told him,
I love where this is going already.
Oh, this is funny because this is how I teach it in my house. All right, I had been warning him for a few weeks that you are going to break one of these windows. No, I'm not going to, Dad. It's not going to happen. All right, my son's almost 13, and obviously it happened. Okay, so he came upstairs, Dad. And he was really devastated that this had happened. And I don't think it was so much the window. It was, you told me and I didn't listen. That's kind of what I was getting from it. He was really upset, right? And he was upset because he understood, like, oh, man, I let my dad down. That's what really upset him.
Yep.
So I recognized this. The window is the window. So I got him. I brought him downstairs, and he's upset. And at one point, I kind of put my arm around him because he was really upset. I said, Logan, how do you think I know how to fix a garage door window? And he's like, I don't know. You looked it up. I said, I want you to really think about this for a second. How do you think that because I'm not a handyman, know how to fix a garage door window? I didn't look anything up. I just know how to do it. And he just was like, because you broke a garage door window? I said, I broke it 3 times when I was a kid. My dad did what I'm doing to you right now. God bless my father. He made me go get the glass and go get this done. And I had to fix the garage door. And I said, he told me I'm going to break the garage door.
Yep.
And I said, and then this is the key, Sandy, is I said, we've got to move on. Let's fix it, find the solution, and move on. We do nothing by dwelling in this emotion. All right. I hear that you're upset. I understand it. Let's move on. Let's find the next thing. That's teaching the lesson that we're talking about. I said, learn. I tell them the only failure is if you don't learn from this. All right. And for the young coaches out there coaching young kids, I would say you'll laugh at this too. This is one of my standards and gauges. When I'm coaching the national team, which is NCAA level players, I should have to tell you something 1, maybe 2 times before you execute on it. Okay, that's the standard for that. And I tell parents, we talk about this on the podcast. Well, what about the U10 level, the U8 level? What is it, like 10, 12? I said, no, it's 477 times. You'll have to tell them it's not an equal scale, right? Yeah. It's like you don't lose one a year. It's so when they're that age, you might have to tell them 500 times. Yep. Guys, I'm not exaggerating that number, by the way. Like I actually mean 500 times. Some kids might be 50, but you have to be patient. They will hear it, and this is the answer to your question. Long answer. People will hear things. Kids will hear things when they are ready to hear them. Sometimes breaking the garage window the failure allows you to be ready to see it, right? And you can't rush anybody on that process. You're asking me, how do you bottle it up? I don't know if you can. All I can tell you is that, when you become conscious to something like this, you want to share it, but people can only become conscious to this when they're ready to become conscious to it. And if they're not ready, there's no judgment. It's patience, right?
And time takes time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I wish you could bottle it because we would be billionaires.
Billionaires.
Yeah.
The concept of always coachable, which obviously is the name of this podcast, if you had to kind of wrap it up, what does that phrase mean to you? Because obviously I specifically did not give you a lot of prep before you were kind enough and agreed to come
Well,
on
that's the
here. But
best way to do it.
I did that
Yeah.
purposefully, right?
That's the best
Because
way
I
to do
wanted
it.
you to
Yeah.
come through. What do you think that means? Like when you heard that phrase, what did that mean to you, or answer it however you want?
Well, that's an interesting question because, if you're applying it to a player or a coach or a person, it can mean a lot of different things. But I think always coachable goes back to what we said earlier, is that never ends, whether you're a coach, a player, a parent. Like you need to always be coachable and always be yearning to learn. And if ego gets in the way from you learning, that is to me the definition of not being coachable, right? The yearning for knowledge to get better is such a key. And you mentioned the time a few minutes ago, and I won't get too galactic here, but that is the only commodity that matters.
Yep.
Right. And I'll say this to you, Sandy. I was once asked, I don't know where this came from. I was once asked, what do you think the pinnacle of life is? It's a pretty big question.
Yeah. How much time do we have?
Yeah. Right. Well, here's the thing. I thought about, I only needed a minute. I thought about that question. I said, well, death. And they got this eyebrow wet, like death is the pinnacle of life. I said, yeah, you can learn until you die. Assuming your brain is working, right?
Yep.
You can learn till you die. And I was like, wow, that's how exciting is that? And the learning, and I got to say this, I'm learning now at my age, things that my body can't do that they used to do. And you can say that as a negative thing. Well, I'm trying to approach that with as much curiosity as I can. And I'm learning that my body's changing. It's not for the better athletically, but I'm learning. And I really try and learn from people older than me, younger than me, my age. There's 8.5 billion different ways of looking at life on this planet. I'm trying not to have the ego that mine's the only one that matters, right? And I try and draw experience and learn from it. I got to say this too, it's more of advice, but my father's 85 and I know other people that are up there. Like, why would I not listen to their wisdom and what they've done? So many people you don't get it, you're old. And adversely, 10-year-old can teach you a lot. Well, they're only 10. Okay. Yeah. With some things, like I don't expect them to teach me anything about driving. All right. But kids have a curiosity that is often stripped from adults, that if you can tap into that curiosity, it'll change your life.
I love that.
I say, don't grow up. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are so many places that people can find you, but if you wanted to tell people if they kind of enjoyed this and learning about you, where they could learn more about you, your books and your 385 podcasts that you host, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, well, listen, if you're the hockey side of the audience, check out Our Kids Play Hockey. I think you'll really enjoy that. Wherever podcasts are listened to, or ourkidsplayhockey.com. It's very findable. If you want to learn more about me, just feel free to DM me on my Instagram. That's at Lee MJ Elias. I love having conversations. I post a lot there about things that make me curious and different things of life and a lot of sports things. And that's usually a pathway to the other stuff that I'm doing, short and simple. But
I can attest to that. I want to say one thing about that. I can attest to that because that is, I think, almost exactly as how I met you, which was, you're much further along in this journey than where I currently am. And from a coaching standpoint, I reached out to you, said, hey, I love your show. And I was amazed and got a ton of respect that you messaged back almost immediately. And we're open to a conversation. And I just, I'll never forget that. I thought it was terrific. I hope to emulate that.
No, you do, buddy. I appreciate that.
No. But so I wanted to thank you, honestly, for being on the show. And for those folks who are listening, thank you for spending this time with us on Always Coachable. If it gave you something, share it with someone who's still growing. Because remember, the best never think they've arrived. So stay curious, stay humble, and stay coachable. I'm Sandy Cohen, and I will see you next time.